Well, hey, kiddos! Tell me, do you like Spider-Man? And do you like fun? If you answered yes, then you're in the right place, because today we're going to be looking into the science of Spider-Man. Thrilling, right? Oh, come on, this isn't that bad. I mean, who hasn't wanted to become Spider-Man?
That sounds more like a science fiction than a fact.
Well, hypothetical child, maybe it does. But after today, you'll know that there is indeed a way that you too could be just like our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Intrigued?
Not.
Great. Well, without further ado, let's get into the science of Spider-Man. Now, before we get into anything like wall crawling or web shooting, there's something else we'll need to go over first, and trust me, it's one of the most important aspects we need for our real-life webhead, and that's G-force resistance. Matthew, what's that, I hear you asking? Well, let me explain. You see, while Spider-Man does have many powers, he's still a man, and that comes with some limitations, especially when it comes to web swinging. In nature, spiders can swing by their webs thanks to how their blood pumps. Well, actually they don't have blood at all. What they have is called hemolymph, and it's pumped through what's called an open circulatory system. In an open circulatory system, spiders' hearts force hemolymph to sacs around all the essential organs. The hemolymph can flow as freely as it wants until the heart sucks it back up to filter out waste and then sends it back out. Humans, on the other hand, have what's called a closed circulatory system. Our blood runs through a continuous cycle that isn't free to flow wherever.
Well, this is all good, but what does that have to do with him web swinging and G-forces?
Great question. Response, I'll ask one to you. Have you ever hung upside down for a little too long and started to feel a bit dizzy? Well, this is because all of your blood is flowing to your head. When a spider hangs like this, it can easily just force its heart to work harder to evenly distribute blood across the entire body. But blood going to the head isn't what we're worried about here. It's blood going away from it. For this one, you can experiment at home. Go outside and find a bucket and fill it with a bit of water. Then swing it in a circle with your arm. If you're spinning fast enough, you'll notice that the water stays at the bottom of the bucket. This is due to what's called centripetal forces, or G-forces. G-force is the amount of force exerted by gravity. The normal amount we are used to is 1G. If we were to look at our bucket example and replace the bucket with Peter Parker and the water with his blood, we could start to see some problems. His brain wouldn't have any blood flowing to it, and when that happens, well, you black out. Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to save the day when every swing sends you plummeting to the ground.
Now, hold on a second. The way you're explaining Spider-Man's web swinging sounds an awful lot like a roller coaster. I've been on plenty of roller coasters, and I've never blacked out.
Correct you are, hypothetical child. Geez, you sure are talking today. You do in fact experience G-forces, but only a limited amount. Roller coaster designers have had to deal with the issue of ensuring their riders don't black out midway through the ride, so they design roller coasters so you will only feel a limited amount of G-force. This is thanks to the teardrop design of the loop as opposed to a perfect circle. So if Spider-Man wants to be able to swing into action, they'll need a suit built to withstand G-forces. Luckily this exists. One prime example is compression suits worn by fighter pilots. These suits compress the body to make sure blood doesn't flow off to other parts of the body, but instead stays where blood is needed.
Great! So now we can web swing anywhere we want.
Well, not so fast. While swinging is fun and all, one thing we'd really like to do is stop. You see, these iconic landings for Spider-Man are something we need to take into account. It's like the old saying, it's not the fall that kills you, it's a sudden stop. Spider-Man can't just be swinging at high speeds and then stop abruptly, no matter how strong he is.
Well, how fast is he going?
Well, lucky for us, someone's already made that calculation. Over on Film Theory, MatPat took this scene from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie and determined that Peter was traveling at a whopping 40 miles an hour. Going that fast and abruptly hitting a wall would have major effects on Webhead's body. Firstly, there's the obvious fact that his bones would break. Not only that, but many of his organs would shatter. When he stops, his whole body doesn't stop all at once. His organs would need time to catch up with the rest of him, smashing into the side of his ribcage and rupturing.
Well, I honestly don't want to have my heart explode when I land. So how do we stop this?
Well, for this we'll need to make Spider-Man more spider-like. In nature, spiders can survive long falls due to two factors. Firstly, they have a protecting layer of skin that's shock-resistant. Secondly, their legs play a big role in this. You see, spiders' legs are kind of like a natural parachute. They provide wind resistance to slow their fall. This is also something you can try at home. If you spin a swivel chair, you'll notice that you go slower when you stretch your legs out versus when you pull them in. When Spider-Man is soaring through the air, he doesn't have a giant circle of legs to slow him down. He's shaped like a bullet shooting through the air. So for our Spider-Man to survive his superhero landing, we need to slow his fall. One thing that could help is having some fabric under his arms, which is something we've seen done in the comics and films before. Another thing we could do is give him some robotic arms to slow his fall, just like a spider, which once again is something we've seen in the comics before.
Hey, I thought you said this be a real-life Spider-Man. There were no robot arms in real life,
Are you sure about that? Let me introduce you to a man named Kevin Warwick. He installed a chip in his arm that was connected directly to his neural system. With this chip and his brain alone, he was able to do some pretty neat things. He was able to control a wheelchair, turn on a light bulb, and was even able to guess what movements his wife acted out when she got a similar chip implanted. Whenever she'd close her hand or wave it, he'd know. But what's really important for us right now is how he was able to move a robotic arm. Kevin hooked his chip up to the internet and moved his arm around, and a robot arm 5,000 kilometers or 3,107 miles away mimicked his actions. This technology is currently in development and has been really helpful for amputees and those with zero mobility. So theoretically, if we were to implant a similar chip, we could make some robotic arms with some sort of shock resistance and control them with our minds. The chips could also help us make our own Spidey sense. However, we'd probably need some form of a robotic exoskeleton to hold up the weight of the arms, and to potentially make up for Spider-Man's super strength. Believe it or not, we actually have machinery like this in development. The US military has created exoskeletons that have enabled users to lift great weights. To top that, scientists at UC Berkeley were able to create a robotic muscle that punched 1,000 times harder than the average fist. It was able to lift objects 50 times heavier than itself and throw them 5 times its own length. So cool! Now I've got all that out of the way, let's get into what we really want to know about, his web fluid. Now, more times than not, Spider-Man wasn't given his web shooting as a superpower. He designed the web shooters himself. So then, if we were to look for a real-life equivalent of web fluid, what would we be looking for? Well, 1, it would need to be strong enough to hold Spider-Man and keep the bad guys at bay. 2, it must be portable, maybe even a liquid that turns to a solid when it makes contact with air. And 3, it must stick. So, is there anything like that in the real world? Well, it turns out there just might be. A company called Bolt Threads was able to create their own version of spider silk using water, yeast, and sugar. Its tensile strength is similar to that of steel, and would definitely hold up Spider-Man. And based off what other information we know, it seems like it could theoretically fit the other 2 criteria. Now, what about wall crawling? Well, we don't have anything yet like that. Researchers are currently looking into how exactly spiders crawl walls, and are seeing how we could implement it into our daily lives. From sticky notes that stick to grease, to astronaut suits that can stick to the side of the ship for easier mobility. Lastly, there's one more thing we could do just to get the most out of our spider suit, and that's color. You see, color has certain psychological effects on us. Blue has been proven to be a peaceful, logical, and soothing color. Wearing blue can actually give you an advantage in a strategy-based game. As for fighting-based games, studies have shown that red is the color to go. Studies have shown that red is an aggressive color that has advantages in fighting. Scientists conducted an experiment where a group of referees were shown 2 boxing matches. In each one fighter wore blue, the other wore red. In both studies, referees rated the red fighter higher than the blue one. What they didn't know is that they just watched the same fight twice, only that the colors were switched. So making our suit red could be just one final touch to make our suit absolutely complete. So there you have it, a real-life Spider-Man suit. Now just for some fun, I want you guys to draw what you think a real-life Spider-Man suit would look like based on what we've talked about. Also on the back, write down what your favorite part of the video was. My personal favorite was the part with the robot arms. Well, that's the end of this video. See ya!